He had everything money could buy. Penthouse views that rivaled the stars, a garage full of cars most people only dreamed of, and a life so glossy it could belong in a magazine. Yet, as Julian Carrington stood alone in his apartment, champagne untouched on the marble counter, he realized something vital was missing. Her name was Clara Bennett, and she had nothing he could buy. Not a single luxurious thing. Just a smile that made the world feel like it had been rewritten in gold, and a laugh that lingered long after it faded. Before getting into the details, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories. Julian Carrington had everything money could buy. Sprawling penthouses with city views that sparkled like diamonds, rare cars that hummed with elegance, and vacations that took him to corners of the world most could only dream of. Yet, as he stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his Manhattan apartment, champagne in hand, he felt an emptiness that even the rarest jewels couldn't fill. Her name was Clara Bennett. She didn't have his wealth, nor did she care for it. She had a small bookstore tucked into a quiet corner of the city, where the scent of old paper and coffee mingled like a secret recipe for happiness. And every Saturday, without fail, Julian would find himself there. Not for books, but for her smile, the one that made the world feel like it had been rewritten just for him. Clara had noticed him too, of course. The well-dressed man who seemed a little too out of place among the stacks of novels and cozy armchairs. She didn't care about the headlines his name made, the parties he hosted, or the yachts he sailed. She only noticed the way his eyes softened when he laughed at a bad pun she'd made, or the careful way he handled her favorite fragile editions of classic literature. One rainy afternoon, Julian stayed after closing to help her carry boxes from a shipment. They laughed, dripping with water, their hands brushing against each other as if the touch could speak more than words ever could. "I don't need your money," Clara said softly, her cheeks tinged with pink. "I just like you. Not the rest of it." Julian's heart thumped in a way that no stock portfolio or luxury car ever had. He leaned closer, fingertips grazing hers. "Then I guess I'll have to earn it in a different way," he whispered. "By winning your heart." Weeks passed, filled with late-night walks in the park, shared ice cream cones on warm evenings, and whispered dreams between the pages of books. Julian discovered the joy of simple things, laughing until his cheeks hurt, learning the names of flowers, and reading aloud to Clara in the soft golden glow of her bookstore lights. But just as Julian felt certain that he had finally found a place in her heart, a letter arrived at Clara's bookstore. Handwritten, elegant, and stamped with a seal she hadn't seen in years. She opened it with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the words. Julian watched, heart in his throat, as her expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief. "What is it?" he asked, taking her hand gently. Clara hesitated, glancing up at him with eyes wide and uncertain. It's from someone I thought I'd never hear from again." Julian smiled reassuringly, but inside, a knot of unease formed. He had millions, he had time, he had patience, but he didn't have the answer to what this letter might mean. And as the rain tapped softly against the bookstore windows, neither of them noticed the envelope trembling in Clara's hands, as if it held the power to change everything. Clara's fingers shook as she held the letter. Julian's hand hovered over hers, unsure whether to pry or simply wait. "Do you want to read it?" he asked gently. She swallowed and nodded, unfolding the delicate paper. Julian watched her eyes scan the lines, noticing the rapid shifts, surprise, confusion, a faint sparkle of something unreadable. "It's from my childhood friend Emma," Clara finally said, her voice quiet but steady. "We haven't spoken in over 10 years. She's coming to visit." Julian blinked. Not exactly what he expected, but there was relief in her tone, not fear. She wasn't worried. She was curious, maybe even excited. Julian smiled, squeezing her hand. "Well," he said, his grin teasing, "I guess I have some competition for your attention." Clara laughed, the sound light and free, and it made Julian's chest swell in a way only she could. "Competition? You're not worried?" "Not a bit," he replied. "I've got a million ways to make you laugh. And I'm betting that's the one you won't forget." The two of them stood there, the rain slowing to a gentle drizzle outside, the warm glow of the bookstore wrapping them in a private world. Julian could feel it, the unspoken promise that no matter who else came into her life, he wanted to be the one she chose, day after day. Then Clara looked up, biting her lip in a mix of hesitation and excitement. "She arrives tomorrow," she said. "And I don't know if I'm ready. I mean, I want you to meet her, but—" Julian chuckled softly, brushing a strand of damp hair from her forehead. "Hey, whatever happens, we'll figure it out together. You and me. Always." Clara's eyes softened, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Then she pulled the letter from her pocket again and held it between them. "Julian," she whispered, "there's something in this letter. Something about a secret we shared as kids. I don't fully understand it yet." Julian leaned closer, curiosity mixing with excitement. "Well," he said with a playful smirk, "I guess we'll just have to uncover it together." "Starting tomorrow?" Clara nodded, her heart fluttering. They didn't know what the secret was, what Emma's visit might bring, or how it would test their budding love, but one thing was certain: Julian wasn't going anywhere. And as the last drops of rain slid down the bookstore window, the envelope sat on the counter, waiting, and the next chapter of their story had just begun. The next morning, the city buzzed with a soft winter light as Clara unlocked the bookstore, Julian trailing behind with a thermos of coffee in hand. The letter lay on the counter, unopened, like a small silent invitation to adventure. "Are you sure you want to open it before she arrives?" Julian asked, his eyes warm but mischievous. Clara hesitated, then shook her head. "No. I want to see her reaction too. Let's keep it a little mystery." They spent the morning arranging displays, laughing over spilled coffee, and sneaking glances at the clock. Julian could feel Clara's nervous excitement mingling with anticipation, and he loved it. Then, just as the clock struck noon, the bell above the door jingled. Julian's stomach did a little flip. Emma. She was exactly as Clara had described in her letters. Bright-eyed, cheerful, and unmistakably the girl who had shared all of Clara's childhood secrets. But there was something else, an air of mischief that promised curiosity and fun rather than conflict. "Clara!" Emma exclaimed, hugging her tightly. "I can't believe we're finally here." Clara laughed, holding her close. "I know. It's been too long." Julian watched them with quiet amusement, feeling completely fine. He didn't feel threatened, only intrigued. Emma wasn't a problem. She was another piece of Clara's past, a puzzle he was excited to learn alongside her. They all sat down with steaming mugs of cocoa, and after the first round of catching up, Emma's eyes flicked to the envelope on the counter. "What's this?" she asked, curiosity sparkling. Clara's cheeks tinged pink. "It's something I haven't read yet." Emma picked it up, weighing it in her hands. "Well, I think it's time we uncover this together." Julian leaned closer, brushing his hand against Clara's, a silent promise that whatever the letter contained, they would face it side by side. Clara carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of parchment, neat handwriting that made her heart skip a beat. She read the first line aloud. "If you're reading this, the secret of the old oak tree still waits for you. But you won't find it alone." Julian's brow furrowed in curiosity. "The old oak tree?" Clara's lips parted. "The one behind my grandmother's house, where Emma and I used to play as kids." Emma's grin widened. "Exactly. And apparently, it's not just a memory. There's something still buried there. Something we promised to uncover when we were older." Julian reached for Clara's hand, squeezing it gently. "Well," he said, "sounds like we have a little adventure waiting. Care to let me join?" Clara's eyes met his, sparkling with excitement and trust. "Of course," she said. And so the three of them stepped out of the bookstore into the crisp afternoon air, the promise of secrets and laughter ahead. But as Julian followed Clara down the familiar streets toward her childhood home, he couldn't shake one thought. What exactly had they promised to find all those years ago? The answer waited at the old oak tree, silent, mysterious, and possibly life-changing. The sun dipped low in the sky as Julian, Clara, and Emma walked the familiar path to her childhood home. Leaves crunched beneath their feet, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of early spring, as if the world itself was conspiring to make this moment perfect. The old oak tree stood at the far edge of the yard, its branches stretching wide like welcoming arms. Clara slowed, her hand tightening around Julian's. Memories surged, secret hideouts, whispered dreams, and childhood laughter that seemed to echo from the trunk itself. "Are we really going to do this?" Julian asked, a playful glint in his eyes. Clara nodded, her heart fluttering. "We promised, didn't we?" Emma grinned, kneeling to brush away some dirt near the roots. "The letter says it's still there. The thing we hid together all those years ago." Julian leaned closer, curious. What did you hide? Clara's lips curved into a shy smile. It wasn't much. Just a little box, filled with notes we wrote to our future selves. And a promise. She looked at Julian, her cheeks warm. A promise that we'd never let go of our dreams, or each other. Emma handed the small, weathered box to Clara. The three of them opened it together. Inside were yellowed slips of paper, some scribbled with childish handwriting, others neat and careful, filled with hopes, wishes, and little declarations of friendship. And at the very center, a folded note in Clara's handwriting, written when she was 8. If anyone finds this, follow your heart. Whoever is with you when you read this, hold them close. That is your promise. Julian's gaze softened as he took Clara's hand in both of his. Looks like I'm holding the right person, he said, voice low but certain. Clara's eyes glistened. You've held me close from the very beginning, Julian. Even before I knew it. Emma smiled knowingly, giving them a little nudge. Well, I think your story is just beginning. And don't worry. I'll stick around to make sure it's full of laughter. Julian laughed, brushing a loose strand of hair from Clara's face. I wouldn't want it any other way. The three of them sat under the oak tree as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of gold and rose. Julian leaned closer to Clara, their foreheads touching, hearts beating in sync. Then, as if the universe itself wanted one final playful twist, a small envelope fell from a high branch of the oak tree. Clara picked it up, curious. It had no return address, just her name, in elegant handwriting she didn't recognize. Another secret? She whispered, eyes wide. Julian grinned, brushing his lips against hers. Whatever it is, we'll discover it together. And as the evening breeze rustled the leaves above them, they leaned into each other, laughter and love mingling in the air, hearts full, and a tiny hint of mystery promising that their story, though beautiful, was far from over.